All right, this is the Pageantry of Life, and as said, I've owned and operated 3 businesses and had times in my life that could be called a true crime series. The most passionate part of my life has been an advocate and as a part of the Miss South Carolina organization as the president and co-executive director. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, I am very, very excited to have the great fortune of, as I've said, that this Pageantry of Life is not truly just about pageants, but I thought it was very important to bring one of my favorite Miss South Carolinas to the podcast room. So let's welcome Jada Samuel. That she needs no introduction as a Miss South Carolina, but you can tell us Miss South Carolina what year.
I was Miss South Carolina 2023.
Well, welcome,
yes.
Jada. It's not our first time.
No.
So around here,
yes.
It's a little bit different. Cheers. We're going to talk some life.
I'm excited.
Well, first of all, I think it is important for our viewers to understand how we met.
Yeah.
Who Jada Samuel is and how you met Chaz Ellis.
Well, we met through the Miss South Carolina organization, and I couldn't be more grateful for that friendship starting there, but definitely, we have many, many moons to go way past the Miss South Carolina organization. But honestly, when I met you, I was a little bit intimidated. Everybody's intimidated by Chaz Ellis when they meet Chaz Ellis. You're the director of the Miss South Carolina organization. You got to be on your P's and Q's. Chaz doesn't play about the look from head to toe. Like, you got to make sure.
So we got the looks today. I'm still trying to make sure that I'm
wearing some Miss Cocky. The looks have to be on point in front of Chaz Ellis.
Well, thank you.
So I wanted to be my best self around you, and then I realized that I could be my true self around you over our time together.
And that is truly what the Pageantry of Life is about. Is I'm sharing part of who my authentic self is. But one of the things that I think is really interesting, just to give our viewers a little back history, is why the Miss South Carolina organization. Tell me how you got involved, why you think you're sitting here today.
Well, I always tell people service is what led me to this organization. Knowing that people did something much bigger than themselves, that's been my motto since I started competing in this organization, was to do something bigger than myself. I wanted to amplify the work that I was doing, and the Miss South Carolina platform gave me that opportunity to reach 50,000 students in 1 year. Like, that is the opportunity truly of a lifetime. So I believe that's exactly why I'm here, and I did what I came to do.
So let's talk a little bit about who Jada was before the Miss South Carolina organization. Like, prior to the crown, the dream, and everything. Tell me what you were doing and where you were at in your life.
Yeah, prior to winning, I had done some pretty incredible things, if I'm being completely honest. At 22, I bought my house, and I was working as a news reporter in local news in Columbia, South Carolina. I had then transitioned into politics and was doing communications for some pretty big names.
Well, let's hear them. Let's hear those big names, because it is very impressive what you were doing.
Yeah, presidential candidate Cory Booker at the time. I had worked for U.S. Senate candidate Sherry Beasley in North Carolina. And so I had, kind of done like all of the in-betweens in politics, from local all the way up to presidential. So
I think that's interesting that you owned a house and you had all that. So you basically, the trajectory of your life was what the everyday American is doing, buying a house, having a job. So tell me how a dream kind of made its way into what you were already doing.
Well, I honestly had given up on that dream, and you know that. But for the listeners, I had competed for Miss South Carolina 4 times prior to going back a 5th time, and even being eligible to go back a 5th time.
I think that's a big part. Is talk about that eligibility.
Yeah, I was 26, so I was no longer within the age limits of being able to compete for Miss South Carolina. So it was kind of like a dream deferred for me. It was over. I was done. We talked about it, and I was like, well, this just didn't happen for me. And, we all go through these phases in life where, you have this huge dream. Maybe you're working towards it. Maybe your mind changes. Maybe life circumstances change it. But for me, I just didn't have the opportunity. And so it wasn't that the dream wasn't still in my heart and still something that I desired. It just wasn't an option anymore. So when Miss America changed the age limit, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is for me. Let me take my time and, marinate on these thoughts and see if I actually want to pursue this dream. And I feel like a lot of people were encouraging me to pursue it. And clearly, that is what was aligned for me, because I ended up winning that 5th time after.
Do you remember that pivotal moment? They call your name. You're Miss South Carolina. Do you remember that moment? And can you express? Because there's one thing that just stood out that was so incredible that night. And there's some interesting historical facts too that I want you to share with our viewers and our listeners.
So for me in that moment, I was blacked out, but also so in tune with who I was in that moment. Like, I did not know how it was going to turn out, but I knew that my value wasn't necessarily placed in winning in that moment, but it was so much bigger than just me. It was a moment to represent for, Black women, being the 4th Black woman crowned in that moment, having a grandmother who grew up in, the 1930s and 40s, and just having experienced segregation and living through a time period where she wouldn't have even been eligible. I thought about her in that moment, and that's the moment that everybody talks about where I'm crying and I'm like, giving her honor, because that is what I came from. I came from a lineage of powerful women, and I knew that I came from that. I was representing people who had unique talents and gifts. Having a dramatic monologue as a talent is not typical in not only our state, but across the board. It's just not a typical talent. So for me, I feel like I had defied the odds in that moment. And it was one of those moments where you just felt weightless because you finally stepped into what you had dreamed and desired for yourself for so long.
So with that dream, that moment, and you said, I stand here because my grandmother couldn't do it. What are some of the things that, after the crown's placed on your head, that you've won a $60,000 scholarship? I want to kind of dive deep into, you become the star of the state, the dream is so present. Mm-hmm. Tell me what lessons, and because this is a part of me, leaning into who I am and revealing who I am. If you could give one piece of advice that I gave you, or one lesson, what would it be?
Chaz, I think I learned so much from just watching you be unapologetically yourself. Obviously, my mother instilled in me to be authentic and to show up, as myself in all rooms and situations. But watching you be truly unapologetic, to the point where you just are yourself in every situation, good, bad, whatever in between.
Boo, I'm about to check you, honey. Yes. What the hell you got on today?
We have a little, Atlanta Housewives moment or whatever. I feel like I learned a lot from you just by you being you. But I remember you giving me space and permission to be myself. And that, I think, is something that, not a lot of pageant girls experience. Directors might try to mold them into someone that they're not. But for you, giving me the space to be just openly and honestly Jada was something that, allowed me to have the impactful year that I had, but also just gave me kind of this nod and this permission to be myself in every other area of my life, and to continue leaning into just being openly and unapologetically myself. So I learned from you by being in a lot of ways.
Well, and thank you so much for that. But I want to talk about one of the things that I think that is important before we leave this specific thing that I want to talk about, is talk about the political race that you were a part of, and the message that was kind of told to you, and that you let kind of be your guider. Do you remember what you told me when we talked about mm-hmm. race, race and mm-hmm. being, that you were one of 4 women? I want you to talk about that and tell me how you feel like that guided you to this point of, mm-hmm. Being in South Carolina, but how it's guiding you today.
Yeah. I shared this moment with you about working for Sherry Beasley for U.S. Senate, and the night that, we had all of these North Carolinians gathering in this one space to potentially be celebrating her win, but also maybe just celebrating her race. Because I don't say loss, because it's never really a loss. There's lessons in all of it. And so for me, seeing her have so many people of every background, every race, every socioeconomic class, all in one place, it was not only a reflection of the area that she represented, but it was a reflection of the United States. And to me, that is what our power is, our individuality and what we represent individually and as a whole. And for me, I wanted to empower people who looked differently than I did, who might have different lived experiences than I did. I wanted to make sure that my reign touched people who looked like that room.
Well, speaking of that, you had the big dream realized. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting that you are the star of the show with so many people helping you and mm-hmm. guiding you or facilitating what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
The crown comes off your head, and you know as well as I do, I think you are still one of the biggest stars. But you're a star, and you are the worker of the star. And so I want to dive deep into your life and the trajectory of your life changed because you'd bought a house, you'd talk about all those things. So where's Jada now? Where's Jada going?
I love that question because I think that the answer is kind of open-ended, and that's how it should be. For me, I don't know exactly what my life is going to look like 10 years from now, but I know that I'm going to continue making an impact. There are things that I discovered during my years in South Carolina that I want to continue leveraging and I want to continue building on. For example, I had this idea about a documentary, and the documentary would be discussing the inequities that I saw in the schools, in education across the state of South Carolina. And that was something that was hard for me. When I see a problem, I want to make a difference. And so going into the next year of my life, I'll begin producing that documentary. And that's really special for me, to be able to talk about that, to be able to continue growing the organization that even led me to this moment. My 501c3 nonprofit organization, I Shape Me, not only serves middle school girls, but we are about to expand and serve college and high school age women. And I think it's really special to be able to continue this momentum that I had as Miss South Carolina and continue building on the connections that I made throughout the year, because that's the most important part of the job, is to foster this sense of community and to foster these connections that are going to be important later on.
Is this where you thought you would be after Miss South Carolina?
To be completely honest, no. I thought I would be immediately moving to a big city, but I think sometimes... Is
a big city off the table?
No. A big city is not off the table. You gonna come visit me if I move?
Of course. That's not even a question. That's not even a question. But it's evident that you're doing all these things. Are there any struggles that you feel as you embark on the documentary, as you embark on what's next? I mean, I'm just going to lay it out there. I know for a fact that you are struggling, and if you are struggling, you're struggling to find the exact place that you think you want to be. But I love the way that you've poised it and presented it, is that it's all in God's timing and it's all that. I just want you to be honest, if you will. What are you fearful of? What are you scared of in this next phase of, or this next year?
I am afraid of picking one lane and being stuck in that lane forever. That is completely, honestly, my
Jada,
answer.
Have you ever thought about being on a 4-lane highway and realizing you can change lanes?
And that's what I'm embracing.
The greatest thing is, you came back and forth from Greenville, and it used to be 2 lanes, and now we've expanded to 4 lanes. So you're seeing... Truly. You are seeing that there are multiple lanes.
Yeah.
You can be going the same path.
Yeah.
And just because you're in the right-hand lane don't mean you can't be in the left-hand lane or the center lane.
Right.
So you thank you for being so candid with that. So tell me how you will navigate,
Yeah. I think for me, it's always the first step. Like, I know what...
Are you ever scared of the second step?
I don't think I am usually scared of the second step. It's always the first step. Because the first step is like the hardest to make. And I talk about this all the time. Like, an object in motion stays in motion, right? Mm-hmm. And so as Miss South Carolina, you're an object in motion. You're in motion all year. And then at the end, you stop. You're not an object in motion anymore. And so to figure out like where you're going and how you're going to become an object in motion again, it's like, I don't want to be like picking this lane and it's not necessarily something that I want to do forever. It's not that you can't pivot. It's not that you can't change. It's just, how does that impact your timeline?
Well, it's
how
interesting.
How does that impact the work that you're able to do?
It's interesting that you say that you thought you'd be in a big city.
Yeah.
Was it Miss South Carolina that made you think you'd be in a big city? Was it your year that made you think you would be in a big city? Was it what you had created in your mind that was going to put you in a big city?
To be completely honest, it was life before Miss South Carolina that made me think that I was going to be in a big city.
I'm going to ask you for 2 cities. If you could choose 2 cities right now.
DC and Chicago. Food. Lots of people, amazing shopping. That'll definitely get you to come visit me. And then, of course, accessibility. I want to be able to hop on a plane and go anywhere, do anything, and just be able to explore and stretch myself out of my comfort zone, for sure.
So let's circle back to, you said it was before Miss South Carolina that gave you. I want you to elaborate a little bit about that. What structures were in place that you had put in place, or do you think what relationships had you made that had kind of either solidified in your mind or your heart, either one, that's where you would be?
What's funny is I think winning Miss South Carolina later on in life, you have a much different perspective of the job, the role, your own life.
And on that note, I've been with 15 of you. Being older definitely brings a little bit more wisdom too. So thank you for addressing that. I love all of them. Nothing said again, but you're right.
Yeah.
You've been places, you've done things.
Things.
I got this. I have a sense of independence, whereas, it's such a wide range.
Right.
So, but I didn't mean to cut you off on that. So.
But no, that's definitely true. But I feel like I was intentional about building a network. That was something that my mentors and people who poured into me had really always kind of told me that I needed to focus on, is building a network and making sure that if I didn't stick to one thing, if that wasn't just news or it wasn't just political communications, how I was going to leverage those connections. And for me, I was a journalism major in undergrad, and so I interned in New York City. I always thought that I would end up back in a big city. It wasn't a question of how or what I would be doing. It was more so just, when is this going to happen for me? Because this is something that I desire. It's something that I've worked for. And it's something that I feel like, I had been intentional about. And I think that was the word that carried me through my years in South Carolina. But that's something that had kind of carried me beforehand, is that I was intentional. I wanted to experience these things. And if you want to experience something, you have to be intentional about creating the space and opportunity for those things to come into your life.
So what changed?
I would say appreciating where I was, learning to appreciate where I was. It might not be a big city that I'm in, but the state of South Carolina is special to me. I have been impactful here. I can continue to be impactful here, and I don't have to go to a big city to make a difference.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. It's the what ifs. If you got a call today that someone wanted you to be on CNN, they wanted you to be on Good Morning America, the Today Show, what would be your response?
I'm packing up. What do you mean?
So, and I'm just going to say that kind of contradicts where you're really good here right now.
Yeah.
But so you're saying that the other opportunities are not off the table?
No, they're not off the table, and they shouldn't ever be. Like we just talked about,
Right.
lanes.
I just want to make sure that we're...
If I pick one lane now and the lane changes and that's a better opportunity at the moment, then I think you take advantage of those. You only get to live one life. I am 28 years old and I have a world of opportunity ahead of me.
Besides being in South Carolina, besides the world of pageantry, what has been one of the most influential moments of your life?
Ooh. That's a really good question. Like a singular moment?
A singular moment.
I would say being laid off from my first job, being a budget cut, and realizing that I was simply a number on somebody's desk. Not necessarily my boss, not necessarily his boss, but to someone else, I was a number, and it was a scratch through. We can get rid of this role, this position, this person, without necessarily thinking about their livelihood or the trajectory of their life or how this might impact them. And
what did you learn in that moment?
To always be open to being a multi-hyphenate, to being multifaceted, and to having multiple lanes that I could switch into if I ever needed to. I think that was the moment when I realized I can't put all my eggs in one basket, that there should always be more options on the table.
Does anything scare you?
Many things scare me, if I'm being completely honest. Many things scare me. I have a fear of failure. I feel like I want to be and do so much, and failing is not an option because I represent so many people that are, doing different things that are bigger than me. I represent, my family of immigrants. I represent, my family of, strong women that have come before me. And so I don't want to fail because I feel like people are watching me. And I'm not afraid to be open about failure, but I don't want my overall life to feel like I've missed out and that I failed.
So in this place that you are right now, where you stand or where you sit, is fear stopping you at all?
No. I feel like I'm ready.
Do you ever feel like you're at the stop sign or a caution light?
No, I feel like my green light is in someone else's hands, and I don't like that.
So how do you take the control back?
Switch lanes as often and as frequently as possible, and continue.
Time to take the exit right there.
Exploring my options.
Yeah, Jada, I appreciate you being so vulnerable in that, because there's two ways to look at it. I remember when the Miss America organization was under change, and there was a lot of turmoil, and there were 40-something states that stood in solace that they were against what was happening. And I was in one state that we as an organization, me and my counterparts, and Ashley and Aaron and our board of directors had not made that same decision that 40 people were, because I think the masses thought, if you don't respond, then you're a coward. Then if you do go with the people, if they get rid of everybody, they get rid of you. And what had been my life for 20-something years could be gone tomorrow. I took that same moment and reverted it back to, I had gotten to where I was in life being, like you said, authentically myself. So if the rest of the people with me didn't stand with me, I was going to stand. And so I said that to our board. I feel this way, so either I step away or we fight this together. Because as a young person who, some of my story, and the viewers are learning my story, is to leave home at 18 years old. I mean, I walked down a street with thinking that suicide was the only option, and scared that that failure may be the only, I was headed towards failure because I had nobody, and the coward in me was, suicide because that's how I felt. That was a cowardly thing to do, a selfish thing to do, but it might be the only thing to do. So I say all that to say it's okay to be in that moment. And the greatest advice that I can give you is to share that you are fearful of where you're at, but know that every little opportunity, take it, every little phone call, every little text, because there is somebody that wants you that doesn't know that they want you yet. So just remember to let that fight, that got you the opportunity to be Miss South Carolina on the 5th time and all that, let that be a huge part of who you are and continue to drive you where you're wanting to go. One thing I want to leave you with is as I do this show, one of the things is, why stop there? Why stop there? And I think it was in this moment with you, I had you here because I knew that you had made an impact on this organization that I'm a part of, but you had made an impact on my life in ways that I did not think was possible. And I could grow, and I'm growing as a person. I've learned things about, your heritage. I've learned things, about your family. I've learned things, you gave me another opportunity. You helped me see the world in a different lens, and I can continue to give and understand from times of different political things, from different, spiritual values and stuff like that. So what's your why stop there?
I just finished the best year that I could have possibly had as Miss South Carolina, with a bucket list that was completely checked, right? And so for me, it's restarting a bucket list and figuring out what my next is. And I am limitless. The world and the world is my oyster, and I am very excited to just step into that. So why put a limit on what I can do? Why stop there?
That's right. Cheers to you, Jada. Thank you for being my guest on the Pageantry of Life. And I want to thank y'all for taking this opportunity to be with us today. Cheers. And every now and then, maybe take a little time to have a conversation with one of your friends and talk about life and their journey, because you never know who needs that little boost. So cheers to y'all.
And do Chaz a huge favor and be sure